Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Rising Laterally podcast. This is Arjun Sachdev.
And this is Jay Baloo. We hope you find something here that offers you new meaning or a fresh perspective.
If you do, we encourage you to give it life.
Be bold.
Experiment.
And most importantly, bring it into the interactions with the people you surround yourself with.
And see what happens. We have the pleasure of having Gaurav Valani with us today. Now, obviously, 2020 was a year that no one could have predicted, and it impacted how each and every one of us work and live life. But as we look ahead, now is the chance to think of your career as an investment. You might be one of the many who is thinking about your career right now or any job searches that you might want to undertake for the rest of this year as a result of not only how different the world is, but also because you may not be happy in your current situation. So this is going to be a pretty impactful conversation. Gaurav is an entrepreneur. He's a career coach. He's a former executive at Overstock. He's one of their earliest employees. He's also a father and a husband. And what's great about him is that he truly thinks that you can find fulfillment regardless of whether you're in the corporate world as a leader or if you branch off as an entrepreneur. And he's helped his clients find jobs that they really want with negotiated salaries that they really want. And the bottom line is that he really improves people's situations. So his wide perspective is really valuable. We want to welcome him to the show. And Gaurav, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Awesome.
Great to have you.
So I know pre-show we were talking about this, but I think one of the best ways people are going to be able to quickly know who you are as a person is if you share your story of how you met Elon Musk.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, a long time ago, from 2012 to 2016, we were running a staffing agency. And when we started, we didn't have like many clients. And, so essentially we raised a lot of money. There was not just me, as a bunch of us. And we had lost a lot of that money. Right. So we raised $1 million, lost I think it was over 700,000 within 13 months. And we did that because we had bought office space on the beach. We had hired too many people too fast. We were throwing events that we probably shouldn't have thrown. And we were like, oh, all of this stuff will net us clients, and none of it did, of course. And I was telling you pre-show that, there was a lot of formative and transformative moments that happened, but one of them was I was sitting next to a buddy of mine in a coffee shop, and he worked at SpaceX, and we were just kind of talking about life and how my business wasn't growing, and there was a moment where he actually went and to the bathroom, and I went onto his laptop and I stole Elon Musk's email address from his Outlook. And I didn't tell him about this till later on anyway. But what I did was, at this point, it was like the bottom for me. I had graduated in 2006. Since 2006 to about 2012, I had so many dead end jobs, I think 10 of them. And so nothing was sort of working out for me. Plus, at that time, I had met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and she was a teacher, an elementary school teacher. And, the only thought that kept kind of circulating in my mind was shit, we're both going to be poor, because teachers, as we know, are underappreciated, underpaid, under everything.
Right.
And I had made no money, and all of my friends were, sort of crushing life subjectively. And they're buying homes, buying cars, taking vacations, having cool jobs. They were either doctors, lawyers, engineers, or they were in the Googles, Facebooks, all the cool things that you can think of. And I had none of that. Right. And so that night I went home and I actually just emailed Elon Musk, and I said, I kind of just laid this whole thing out to him. I was like, look, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, first-time entrepreneur. We have this staffing agency. I know SpaceX uses staffing agencies. Because that's kind of information you can find readily. And I was like, I'd love to be a vendor for you guys, but I'd love to do it differently. We won't rip you off. We won't do all the shady things that staffing agencies do. And I was hoping he would just respond and be like, yeah, let's do it. I get it. You're a fellow entrepreneur. Yeah. And that obviously didn't happen. And back then, I think I was telling you this, Arjun, that like in Outlook, you can see read receipts, right? Like you can see when someone reads your email.
Right.
And I think 2 days went by and Elon Musk read it, and he never responded. Like even few days after that, he never responded. I was like, okay. So I just sent him another email, and I saw the read receipt for that. Followed up again, sent him another. Like, so this cycle played out for me. I sent him, I think it was like 76 or 77 emails, and I think on that 77th or one of those, he didn't even respond. Like he never responded, by the way. He just, the last one, he forwarded over to his director of human resources, and all it said was, meet with this guy. He doesn't seem to go away. And I could see it because it was like forwarded, right? Like, so you could read the chain. And the guy, their director of HR met with me, and so I went and I visited them, and it was a typical like sales meeting. I was like, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, love to work with you. And in staffing, most staffing, it's traditionally like it's all contingent, right? So they don't pay us until we find them a candidate that they hire, and then they don't even pay us until 60 or 90 days after that person is there. So they don't really have much to lose by taking on another vendor. And he was like, all right, let's do it, And so at the end of that meeting, I just happened to ask him, I said, hey, is Elon Musk here? Like, can I meet? And he's like, yeah, he is here, but we don't just like let anyone go and meet him. And I said, okay, I get that, but like, can I meet him? Because I think it would be funny if he sees the guy who sent him a bunch, like 70 something emails is finally here.
Yeah.
And the guy said, how about this? I'll just quickly take you, he checked his calendar and he was available, and he's like, I'll take you to his office. Just let's go say hi. And for the only thing I ask is, please don't fan out when you see him, meaning like,
right.
Don't lose your cool. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll be professional. So he takes me to his office, and he knocks on the door, opens it, and he's like, hey, Elon, this is Gaurav Valani. He's the person that was talking to you about staffing services. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was like, oh, I'm such a big fan of yours. And I could see the director of HR like looking like, oh my gosh, I just told you not to say that,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and he could see I was embarrassed, and he was embarrassed. And then I think Elon Musk kind of like he chuckled because of that situation. And he's like, hey, look, I have 15 minutes on my calendar. Do you want to grab a coffee with me? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And
absolutely.
So we sat there, and that was a really strange meeting because Elon Musk, like, it wasn't this like, let me get to know. I didn't get to know Elon Musk. He was just like, okay, why are you here? What makes you different? How are you guys going to find us candidates? And at the end of it, so I was just like bombarded with questions and having to answer them in real time. And I probably choked on so many of those. But at the end of it, he's like, look, if you, if you do all right for us, I'm happy to continue to help your company and introduce you to other people or whatever. And I was like, awesome.
Wow.
And, there were, again, as I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of things that happened that helped our company grow. But I think that kind of allowed us to feel like, wow, like we can do this, and that staffing agency ended up growing to 72 million by the end of 2016. And then we were acquired by a management consulting firm called North Highland.
Wow.
So that's kind of like how that story played out.
That's awesome.
It's a happy ending. Yeah, that's awesome.
And
very
it's
happy
great
ending.
for everyone.
Yeah.
And it totally sets the tone. I mean, for this entire episode, because it just shows that like your persistence is going to break people's resistance. And even if you don't have like a defined plan, if you have some sort of persistence and some sort of hope, that's really all you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I've been encountering too recently is the idea of like imposter syndrome. When you're early to a role or you're doing something for the first time, kind of feeling like you're an imposter, just given the fact that you really haven't built competencies around those new challenges or new projects. Like, did you feel that at all as you were building something for the first time?
Yeah, I did, but I think I feel that like every day. And I think there's a couple of things, right? One, you have to be okay. You have to be okay just feeling like you're going to be embarrassed all the time. Like once you put the I'm going to get embarrassed aspect away, it almost frees up your possibilities. Because at some point when you stop caring what people think or you stop caring about failures, you just kind of free yourself up to go and pursue things that you otherwise may have been too scared, I suppose, to pursue. And like even today, uh, I have a career coaching company, as you mentioned, but even in this particular space, or in the entrepreneurship space, or even in your podcast space, there's always bigger and better players, right? There always is. And one of my coaches, my business coach, told me once, he said, how long do you want to be a big fish in a small pond? Right? Because at that point, you're no longer really learning anything. You're just the big fish, and everyone keeps coming to you.
Yeah.
And when you are the big fish, your growth literally stops because you are the big fish, right? If you are okay being small fish in the big ocean, then you constantly have the opportunity to keep growing and learning. So all these people that are ahead of us, or bigger than us, or more popular than us, or more successful than us, these are all just people that we get to learn from, that allows us to level up, right? Because for them, there's a million other
it never stops, right?
Right? Yeah. So what are they going to do? Are they going to quit, or they're just going to keep growing? And so I think when I accepted those two things, that one, I'd rather actually be the smaller fish, and then as a consequence of that, like, I will be embarrassed, I will have setbacks, but those are all just things that will allow me to level up. That kind of put that imposter syndrome sort of thing to bed.
It's a great message.
Yeah, it's great advice. And I love that mindset, because it's like, it doesn't matter what you did in the past. What you did in the past really has nothing to do with what you're going to do in the future, or how you should be thinking about the future. And at any moment, it just takes one or two things for the entire trajectory of your life to change. And I think that that's something that you bring to your coaching program as well, and something that resonates, because according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workers are changing jobs every 4 years on average. There's more studies that are coming out where people are not engaged at work. If you think about turnover and what that costs our US economy, it's billions of dollars. You think about people's mindsets. I mean, they're constantly looking at different organizations. And then there's a higher trend of people that are just not willing to stay in their current jobs. So people need guidance, and they need to tap into the mindset that you just laid out, not only with the Elon Musk story, but with the imposter syndrome story as well. So if we turn to how you help people, can you walk us through some of the mindset shifts or strategies that you talk about, so that people can actually gain control of their careers, or feel like they're more in control of their careers?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think we should first and foremost be aware of how our mindset came to be, right? I do believe that our mindsets are created by accident, right? So it's constant reprogramming or programming as we're growing up, the people we're surrounded by, our parents' lives, right? Our parents, especially me, I'm Indian, in our South Asian community, most of our parents were immigrants who moved to the United States, and they took so many risks, right? They didn't really know the language. They didn't know the marketplace. They didn't really have any, unless they came in with a specialty, they didn't even have much capabilities that the market needed. So they had to take all these jobs, or they had to work really hard, and they felt like, look, once we have a job, we need to hold on to that job, and we need to work really hard so that our children then don't have to take those risks. But so then, we grow up being told, play it safe, just stay in this company, stay in this job. Once you get right, we're told what they thought.
Right.
But in fact, it's because of what they did, which was taking the risk, that allowed us to be in the position that we're in. So why not continue to take risks, right? So, and anyway, so when you tie that into mindsets, just one, be mindful of where your mindsets come from and how it's been programmed, and is it even really serving you today? And I think when you relate that then to people who are in the working world, one of the biggest mistakes that I see when we start working with someone is they've been in one company for 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, and all of a sudden they got laid off. Or let's say they never got laid off, but they realize wait, I'm completely underpaid. And and it's because the longer you stay in one company, unless your trajectory within that company has just been on the up and up, the market completely passes you by, right? Because you forget that the longer you're in one company, the actually like the more knowledge you do have, that's actually leverageable to another company. And that company would love to have your knowledge. So if you brought it to them, they would pay you
Yeah.
for that, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you then just repeated that multiple times, like every couple of years. And you're right, like people are staying in jobs less, longer than they used to. And I think it's in tech, it's even like a year and a half to 2 years, and that's become the new normal. So if you look at your mindset, like, wait, look, or you look at your career and say, look, I'm just going to keep getting better at what I do, and then seeing who will continue to keep like finding that valuable. If your company finds that valuable and they're promoting you and they're paying you competitively, great, stay. But if you know they're not, then it doesn't hurt to go and leave and see, well, what other company out there will pay me, right? Or value me or support me in my growth. So does that help kind of answer that question, I think?
Yeah, it sets it up.
Okay.
It sets it up. And it gets you to start thinking about also like, all right, I'm in A situation. If I want to get myself to B situation, maybe I need to reverse engineer how I get there, and like figuring out my path to how to get there and how do I leverage the knowledge I have, like you just said. So I think that there are elements that people can pull from that.
You know, you mentioned a year and a half to 2 years in one role. Based on the numbers or your own personal opinion, do you think there is a sweet spot? Like if you're working with your clients, do you dispense any advice around how long exactly they should be at one company?
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I don't think you should just jump every few months or every year. I do think it benefits you to stay at least a couple years, because it's really hard to come in and make an impact in less than a year, right? So you want to almost think of it from a place of like, what impact do I want to make at this company? What knowledge and experience do I want to absorb? What achievements do I want to absorb before looking? And that almost will then set that, like, how long should I stay answer for you. You know, one of the things, Arjun, you've heard me say is that, the concept of the M&M store, right? So
Oh yeah.
all three of us are in California right now. So hypothetically, and I share this story with like every potential client or client I work with. And I say, if I came to you and I said, hey, listen, I want you to drive from California to New York, and you don't get to have a phone, you don't get to use like GPS, no maps, nothing. You just have to get to New York. Well, we're all smart enough to know, okay, well, if I drive east long enough, I'll get to New York, right?
Yeah.
But like, how we get there might be extremely inefficient. We might get rerouted. We might end up in like places we don't want to be. We might, we might take the longest route possible to get there. But eventually we know, okay, we're driving east, so we'll get to New York. So we'll get to New York. But then where in New York we end up is also, not determined, or not for sure. So we might end up in Buffalo, and like, who the heck wants to be in Buffalo, right? Or we might end up in like some really unsafe place in the Bronx, or I don't know, you might, like, we don't know, right? But instead, if I said, all right, I want you to drive from California to the M&M store in downtown Manhattan, and I'm going to let you use your map or your phone or whatever to get there, then we're smart enough to know, all right, cool, all I have to do is put in the M&M store in my maps, and I'll get there. Right. So one, we get there the fastest. We don't take any routes that will slow us down. And then two, we get M&Ms out of it, right? So I think about that, like in our career too. It's like most of us just really don't know what our M&M store is yet. And because of that, we take all these routes. We don't know if they're serving us or not. We stop at places we probably shouldn't stop at. We might stay at one place for too long. That place might not really be helpful. And at the end of the day, we don't really have any M&Ms to show for it, right? And so I think, like, to your point about reverse engineering, it's like, well, let's figure out what that M&M store is, and then we'll know immediately what the fastest and clearest path you need to take to get there.
So helping people get granular with identifying that M&M store, I mean, what are you telling people to do other than look at like job descriptions of what they want? I mean, what other things can people be doing to become more granular?
Well, I think also looking at what you enjoy doing. I think in our careers, the question we should ask ourselves is, instead of saying what's my dream job, I would rather say, because that will always change, I bet. But I think, what problem do I like to solve? What problem do I want to get really good at solving? Or what problems do I want to get really good at solving? Right? If it's coding, then great. If it's design, then great. If it's whatever, right? But when you understand like this problem is one that I enjoy working on, and I'm going to enjoy getting better at it, naturally you'll keep moving up, because your level, your capabilities compound, I think, over time, right? So yeah, so ask yourself that. Then I would say, look at what other people out there who are also solving these problems are doing, right?
Nice.
So let's just take an example of an accountant or someone in finance. And if they really wanted to be a CFO, then go and look at other CFOs and see what steps they took to get to becoming a CFO. What skills did they really master, right? What certifications or things did they learn over time? What companies did they work at? Were they always at big companies? Did they take some smaller route? Like, did they go and work at a startup for a bit? Right. So there's a lot of things we can look at, but once you know the problem you enjoy solving, you see what other people are doing, your first two problems are they're no longer problems. Now you know exactly what you need to do, and you just have to kind of follow along that path. That's our GPS.
Love that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And you probably have a pretty clear idea of what problems you like solving early on in your career too. By your late 20s, early 30s, you kind of have a sense of what problems you're built to solve. So even if you don't know exactly what your M&M store is, at least you have that sort of North Star.
Right. Yeah. I think too often people are like, I need to follow my passions or my purpose, but I don't think that it's so binary. Like, your passions can be like my passion, my passions will never make me money. I like eating like hot Cheetos and watching Family Guy. Like, that is one of my passions, but like no one's paying me for that, right?
Yeah.
But at least if I ask myself, well, what problem do I also like working on? Then at least I know that that's a skill other people will pay me for. So your
Yeah.
passions don't always have to be your career, I think.
Yeah, that's
Completely
true.
agree.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, it's interesting because people probably think that, and then they get caught up because they're like, why am I not getting paid for my passion? And they may lose some steam behind that thought. But in terms of helping people like connect the dots, so they figured out the first couple steps. Now, let's say that they have identified their M&M store. Like, what are your thoughts, or how do you suggest people start applying for it, or reaching out, or connecting with the hiring manager? I mean, what are some action steps or action items around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you should only try to look, a few years out. We don't really need to know, we don't need to plan out the next 20 years, right, of our career, because the economy changes, technology changes, whatever. We might change as humans, right, in our growth as humans. But I think, let's say, if we take back that example, go back to the example of the finance person. Well, once we know you want to at some point be a CFO, then I would say, all right, now you've looked at other people's careers. You know that the first step they took was becoming an accountant. Do you have the skills to be an accountant? Let's assume you do. Great. Now, I would say, let's pick the companies that you would love to work for. And I would then take a look at the list of companies out there that just speak to me. Their values speak to me, their mission speaks to me, their product might speak to me, a multitude of those things, their culture, all of that. And I think the first thing most people do is they'll just throw together some sort of resume and then just start applying to hundreds of jobs. And that's really ineffective, because we know how many people are out there doing the same exact thing. So these recruiters and these companies get bombarded with thousands and thousands of resumes, depending on how common that job is, right? So what we kind of tell our clients to do is go and reach out directly to the people who work at these companies. And right before you do that, make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn profile directly speak to those people. So if we know that they're looking for you to solve XYZ problems, and you'll find these on a million job descriptions, right? Then can you can you structure your resume or LinkedIn profile to show that you have either solved those types of problems or you demonstrate the capabilities to solve those types of problems, right? And then once that's set up, at least the right people will look at your resume or your LinkedIn profile, because that is important to some degree. But beyond that, I would say go and reach out to the CFOs that work there, the directors of accounting that work there, the people who oversee finance and accounting, whatever it might be, and message them. And don't say, hey, my name is Gaurav. I think I'm a great accountant and I saw your job opening. I'd love to work for you, because they all get that.
Yeah.
But instead, I would maybe say something like, hey, Arjun, I came across your LinkedIn profile because I was doing some research on the next steps of my career. And it looks like your company is working on some exciting things. I saw recently that you're trying to implement blah, blah, blah strategy or XYZ initiative. And that's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And not only passionate about, but I have experience working on that at XYZ company of my own. And here's how we solve those problems. And I'd love to see if that's kind of how your company's thinking about it. What challenges you guys are facing, what are you running into, and see if we can just kind of explore synergies. And at the very least, if I'm not a good fit for some of these roles that you have open, I'd love to introduce you to someone in my network who is.
Nice.
So I'm coming to you first with so much value that it's really hard to say no. And I'm showing you that I've also done exactly what you're trying to do, or I have the capabilities to do that. Right. But if you don't like me, I'm at least willing to say, I'll still introduce you to anyone in my network that might be a good fit, or try to be a resource for you down the line. Right. So what that does is that tells the person that you are not coming to them with your hand out. You're coming to them trying to offer them help first. And now, in our program, there's we've been doing this for, I don't know, over 5.5 years. So we see a very clear statistic. And that is, if you reach out to 100 people and you get 33% or 37%, that's a really good number of those people reaching back out to you. That's 37 people that would never have reached out to you had you just applied to a job. Right. True. And not only top of that, when you apply to a job, the first person you talk to is a recruiter. But instead, you're reaching out to somebody who actually makes decisions. And when you start with someone like that, and they see the value you bring to the table, typically what happens in our program is that person will go directly to the recruiter and say, hey, get Jay into the hiring process immediately. Right. And he or she may also say, by the way, Jay's, don't worry about what Jay's looking for. It's a little over what we're willing to pay, but that's not a big deal. Because in a job description, think of it like this. Job descriptions are created by human resources. Human resources also set like budgets and salaries. So let's say that finance person is looking for a senior accountant job. The most that senior accountant job pays based on what the HR person has said is like $100,000. Then when you talk to the recruiter or HR, they'll say, what are you looking for? What's your expectations? And you'll say 120. They'll say, sorry, that's a lot out of our budget. Next, right?
Right.
But if I started with the CFO or someone way up there, in that conversation, that person will say, by the way, what are you looking for? And if I would have said 120 or 130, they'd be like, all right, cool, no worries. Because to like a company, what is paying you $30,000 more? Does it really matter?
Right. No.
So that's how our clients usually get these huge job offers, because we don't really start with HR or recruiting. We really start with someone who can go to HR and recruiting and say, hey, by the way, give this person $20,000 more. It's not a big deal. And then HR is kind of like, okay, I have to listen to them because they're like ahead of me, So absolutely. I think that would be my very next step once you know the jobs you're going after.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And I mean, just if we take that first chunk of this conversation, the action items that I'm thinking about for people are like, okay, number one, figure out the challenges or problems that you want to work on, start to define and get granular with your M&M store, maybe look at 10 or 15 job descriptions and try to reverse engineer some of the language, not only in your resume, but on your LinkedIn page, and then in how you would bring the value to a conversation, and then start connecting with people that are making decisions, like the right hiring managers or the right people at companies, and not just blindly, sending out the resume. So that's what I gathered so far, and I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's like, be ready to say, what's the value that I bring? What is the impact that not only have I made, but that I'm capable of making? And then lastly, what separates me as a human being from every other human being? Right? Because all of that matters once you kind of get further and further along the process with any company. But yeah, you're right. In studying those job descriptions, if you don't study those job descriptions, you won't really know what problems this company is trying to solve. Therefore, you don't know what to really put on your resume, right? People think I should just put everything I've ever done on my resume. And it's almost like, no, just put what's relevant to your target audience.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard the line before. People remember the average of what you told them, not the sum. So if you put all these extraneous details, it kind of dilutes your story. One question I was going to ask you, though, drilling down into that last point, do you have any advice for people that are kind of trying to find the language around what separates them as a human being and what their kind of defining personality traits are? Because that's something that I think I've struggled with in the past when, people ask me like, tell me about yourself, or, all right, put a headline at the top of your resume about, your 3 like key personality traits. It's hard to come up with something that doesn't feel generic. So I'm just wondering if you have any kind of advice there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think specificity around like achievements matters a lot. So here's exactly what I've achieved, Mr. CFO guy or Mrs. CFO girl, right?
Yeah.
And this is how much money I've helped save a company. This is how much money I've helped a company make, right? These are the processes that I've implemented that has simplified so much or streamlined so much. And it's so specific that the second the person reads that, it's almost, it stands out, or it's much more impactful than like, I'm a fast learner. I know how to, fit into a multi-dynamic work.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
I don't even know what any of those things mean, to be honest, but so we just remove fluff. Nothing like fast learner, nothing like team player, nothing like whatever, right? It's just, here's what I've done, and this is what. And then once you get them on the phone, that's when your personality comes out. That's when you want it to come out.
Yeah.
And then you talk about, here's what separates me, right? And usually what separates you from anyone else is just your story, right? So in these scenarios, it's almost like I don't want to sound like everyone. I want to be vulnerable, and I want to tell you my story. Look, I moved here when I was 4. My dad had a bunch of failed businesses. That made me, want to go and work for or learn these skills because I saw he was struggling with finance or whatever, right? I don't know. I had cool example was, we had a client interview at Peloton. And before he went in for the interview, I was like, why are you interested in Peloton? And he told me the story of, and I said, just tell me as why are you interested in this? And he's like, well, I'm interested in fitness and health in general. And I said, why? He said, well, before, like a few years before that day he and I talked, he had met his girlfriend, and his girlfriend is a fitness instructor. And she's so into like health and wellness, like mind, body, soul, everything. And when he met her, he was like completely out of weight. He didn't have energy. He just felt kind of low about himself. And she introduced like diet, nutrition, recovery, I don't know, working out into his life. And like he's like a completely different person. And because of her. And I was like, oh, cool. Are you going to say that story in your interview? He's like, no, I thought that was too personal. I was like, no, literally, that is like the exact thing you want to say in this interview, right? Because that helps him stand out. Exactly. And he got that interview because he reached out. We did the same thing. We reached out to the director of product management. That's what he was going for, a product role. And he talked about how he had all these cool go-to-market campaigns, his process of like how he gets a product from inception to market. So that is what stood out, his achievements. Then when he got on the phone, it was less about what he does and more about who he is. And that story kind of tells it all, right? So the director of product could see, she could feel it, hear it, see it, whatever, that like, wow, this guy is, he's different. He's passionate about this. He he's not coming in here looking for a job. He's looking to help us really grow and like, improve his career.
Yeah, it's like he
Love
saw the
that.
benefits of working out and he felt it so much that he's going to take it to the world, and Peloton probably loves that type of stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
And it was like a sincere thing that he said, right?
exactly.
So that was
Yeah.
kind of a neat sort of example of like, you want to leverage your personal story and how it ties into them.
Yeah, and don't be shy, right? I mean, even if it is personal,
Yeah.
if it's true and coming from a sincere place and aligns with their story, then chances are it's going to land and be extremely memorable, which is so helpful when they're looking back at all the people they've interviewed. It's great to have something that sticks out in their memory, because I think that can make all the difference.
Yeah. Removing the need to be like, to sound so perfect. It is so helpful. This is like, Jay, you asked about the imposter syndrome. It's like, don't be okay making a fool out of yourself in the interview, because this is your personality. You don't want someone hiring you for who they think you are. They should hire you for who you actually are, right? I'll give a quick other example, and I love this one too. I have a client, her name is Gabby, and she is allergic to like pets. She's just allergic to animals. And so she had an interview, but she loves animals, by the way. And she had an interview for this like company. It's a SaaS company that provides insurance and other, I don't know, pet related services to pet owners. And when we did our interview prep with her, I had her like tell me what she would say to certain answers, like tell me about yourself and all of that. And she started the same way. She was like, well, I believe that I'm a very fast learner, and I'm great at like selling, and this is how I've sold. And it was so like, I forget the exact thing she said, but it was so, I don't know, it felt so artificial. And I said, all right, let's take a step back. Why are you interviewing at this company? What do you like about it? And she's like, well, I just love animals. And she's like, but I think that's a stupid thing to say. And I said, okay, well, why do you love animals? And she's like, well, they make me happy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, cool. And I was like, do you have any animals? And she's like, no, it's because I'm allergic to them, funny enough. And I said, all right, awesome story right there, right? Now let's package that. So growing up, she's always, seen all of her friends have pets. She could never be around those pets. She's tried having a pet. They had to give that pet back, right? We uncovered all of this stuff. And then what a cool way to be involved in the lives of animals and pet owners, because you can't be one.
Right.
So that story
Wow.
then helped her stand out from all the hundreds of other people who were applying for that sales position at this like company. And so again, like being like leveraging your story and what makes you sort of stand out is what I mean by like, the things you want to say in an interview that are not related to the job, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Something that we talk about is just you being you right off the bat. You're automatically unique to me. So anytime you're in an interaction, it's like, dude, you're already different. Just be you.
Mm-hmm.
So Gaurav, since we have you talking about specific language, what kind of specific language do you practice with or share with your clients when they're trying to have a conversation with the HR manager? They're trying to start the conversation. Maybe they're trying to extract some pain points around why the job's even open. And then they try to end the conversation with an HR manager. Can you just give us some tidbits and like specific language for each part of that conversation? So how do you kick off a conversation with the HR manager? How do you discover why the role's even open? And then how do you end it typically?
Yeah, great. So I think the first couple things you want to do, the first question you want to ask in any interview, whether it's an HR manager or someone, is, hey, Arjun, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this interview with you. I'm curious, I know you probably have a lot of questions for me, but before we get started, would you mind sharing what was it about my background that made you want to speak with me today? Boom. Now you have the answers to your test, right? So you have your cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Whatever he or she tells you on that in that answer is what you know you need to focus on. Everything else almost becomes irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then the second thing you want to do is you want to open up the interview with them. So making it about them. So I've been told this a lot, and I share this all the time too, is nobody cares about how much you know until they know about how much you care. right? And you think about when you're interviewing with someone, on the other side is they're just a human being, right? Can I get this person to open up? Can I get them to talk about themselves? Can I make them, right? Because every interviewer, whether they know it or not, comes in with some sort of preformed bias about you. I'm going to ask these questions. I want to hear these answers, and they need to say this, they need to say that. So I want to break that wall down immediately. So right after I ask that first question, what I want to do is then say, hey, by the way, thank you for answering that. And I was quickly want to mention, I had a chance to look at your LinkedIn profile. I noticed that, several years ago, you were working in insurance and now you're in health. Like, what was that like? Or what made you want to go to this? And, or you've been here for 9 years. What's kept you here so long? Or I saw that you started your own business 5 years ago. That had to have been tough. What made you want to come back into the corporate world? Or how was that experience? Like, I don't care what the question is, just ask something about them, right?
Right.
Now you might most likely, at least, even if you don't go full on into it, you'll at least give me something. And now I'm sort of breaking down your wall chip by chip by chip, right? So then now I've got you talking about you. You're feeling a little bit better about yourself. Cool. Now you probably like me a little bit more. Yeah. Then throughout the interview, I'm not just sitting there being transactional, meaning I don't want to just answer every question you ask me, because that doesn't help me stand out, because I'm not making you feel a particular way, right? So now let's say you ask me a question. I would answer the question, or every couple questions I answer, I would flip it back to them and I would say, is that sort of what you're looking to hear? Or how are things done at your company? I can't imagine the way I've done it is the only way it's been done, or something like that. And then, like you said, and when it comes time to start asking more questions, I would also ask, like, I'm curious, why is this position open? What are you hoping for somebody to come in here and solve within the next 6 months, 1 year from starting this job, right? What are other people doing now that's working really well and that's not working really well? And I'm becoming very consultative, right? And so the more you tell me about why this position's open, what you're hoping to solve, what's not working, what you've tried that hasn't worked, the more I know what to say, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, I know what to avoid. Because if I start talking about something I've done that I think is badass, but you're trying and it's not working, then immediately I'm disqualifying myself, right? And separating us. But instead of me just talking about me, I'm like, let me learn as much as I can about you, right? The whole idea of, Jordan Belfort talks about sell me this pen. The idea behind that is he doesn't want to sell to somebody who doesn't need a pen. So first he would say, are you even in the market for a pen? What kind of pen are you using? What's working with that pen? What's not working with that pen? Now I know if my pen is the right pen for you or not, right? Or one of the pens I have. And so it's the same sort of kind of concept here, where I don't want to just talk about my experiences willy-nilly. I want to know exactly what you need, why you need it, what you've been doing, what's not working, what's working. Then and only then will I know what's relevant to you and what's irrelevant, right? And then so that's how I would play the whole interview out, is back and forth, conversational, consultative. And then I usually wrap an interview by asking a very, like, what most people would think is an audacious question, which is I would just say, hey, listen, is there anything about my background that concerns you about my ability to do this job? Because I would love to clarify or confirm any of your concerns. Like how badass is it to be like, I want to confirm my shortcomings.
Yeah, right.
And so what that helps you to do is, one, it catches any red flags they have in real time. Because what most people regret after they go on interviews is they'll say, shit, I wish I said this, or I shouldn't have said that, or I said too much about this, or whatever. So now if you ask them that question, sometimes they will say, I just feel like you haven't worked on any large enterprise projects yet. So then you can say, you know what, you're absolutely right, I haven't. But I have had exposure to them when I was doing XYZ thing at XYZ company. And the reason I feel relatively qualified to address that is because I saw how the steps they took when they were working on enterprise level projects. And here's what I learned from that I think I could potentially apply here, right? So now you're confirming, but you're also redirecting them to a positive, So you're kind of like helping them ease any pain points they have of you by confirming it and absorbing it, rather than saying, oh, no, but. It's like, no,
Right.
let's not say the buts. Let's actually acknowledge what they're saying and then redirect them to a different positive and then ease their concerns.
I love that.
That would be the talk track or language that I use in an interview.
You're coming off as authentic. You're coming off as someone who's humbled as well. It's like, yeah, I've done these things, but I'm willing to do these things. And, I just think it's a fantastic way of being different.
Yeah. One thing, I think is important. You just brought up humility. And I think that's a really big indicator of your EQ. And companies look for that, right? At least forward-thinking companies. And I think like in an interview, we're so quick to talk about all of our successes. I did this, I did that, I did this, right? But I think when in the process of talking about our successes, we should always attribute that success to something or someone else, not us. So, I was fortunate enough to be able to have helped this company raise $4 million. But the reason we were able to do that was because the leadership team really worked with me on how to structure these pitches and how to analyze these deals. And my boss directly has so much VC experience that it meant the world to me to be able to work directly under him or her, right? So now automatically my success is their success. And so if you're interviewing me, you're going to think like, wow, if he's talking like that about all of his former bosses, how's he going to like talk about me? He's going to also make me look good. Right. So it just kind of, it's tacky to just be like, I did this. I'm so smart. I'm so accomplished. It's more like, no, like we did this. Here's why we did this. Here's what I learned from all the people I've worked with. And that's why I'm here today, because I think they've helped me along my journey. And now I think I can leverage that and help you guys accomplish XYZ things.
Oh, that's so powerful. And I mean, even if you think about Brady's not sitting up there saying, I won this ring. He's always pointing to his coaches and his teammates, and it's about them. So there's a similarity there.
That's right. And he means it too, right?
So wait, Gaurav, I got to ask you, because we keep talking about specific language and you're just sharing all these gems. So another thing I would want to pick from you is how you might go around a salary negotiation, whether it's a salary increase or just like negotiating a salary from one job to another. Is there a specific language that you can share with us on that?
Yeah, I love that question. And this is where I get most excited, just when you see someone just get paid big time.
Yeah, the M&Ms, baby.
The M&M, dude. Have you heard of the Chinese menu philosophy? Essentially, it's like when we go into a restaurant and we have a menu, we think we have all this free will and we get to order what we want. I don't want this, I don't want that, I like this, I like that. But really, we're just ordering from what they're giving us, right? They're giving us the options and we're just picking from one of their options. So in a salary negotiation, the mistake most people make is they'll get a salary or job offer or whatever, and immediately they'll be turned off by it and they'll say, oh, I don't like this, I want that, right? And instead, I think it's so important to give the company, the employer, options, right? So I would say, thank you so much for your trust in me by offering me this position. I'm actually really excited, right? I want to be very transparent and say that I'm appreciative of the offer, but however, the companies that I'm in the process with currently are offering between X and Y. So let's just say the salary they give you is $100,000. Okay. You could say that same sentence, and then that X you give them should be a little bit higher than the $100,000. And you want to make it so specific. I'm giving you like really shady recruiter tactics here that work. Okay. So you want to make it so specific, like, and then the why, it should be kind of high and a little bit outrageous. Okay. So, the companies that I'm currently in the process with today are offering, and my clients sometimes are never in the process with anyone, but we don't care. We just say it, right? These companies are lying to you flat out with what they can offer. It's okay to lie to them right back, just for this particular thing and a few other things, but we won't get into those things. But so then I would say, all right, the positions I'm currently in the process with right now are offering between 107.5, and 123, right? So like now I've given you such a specific number, you're almost going to think that there's no way I'm making that up. Like, holy shit, this guy's in the process with other companies. We don't want to lose him. So then I would then continue and say, look, I don't quite expect us to get to the 123, but would you consider one of these three options? So now option one is higher base, maybe lower bonus or some sort of sign on. Option two is higher title, maybe medium base, maybe lower bonus. Option three is like the highest base, and something else. Like, it's just like when we go and we order like a small drink, large drink, you usually get a medium drink, right?
Right.
And so now the company's like, wow, they're at least willing to work with us. We know what we need to get them. And these are one of the options they would take. Now they think if they give us the lowest one, that they're winning, like, oh, we got them, sucker. But really we win, because like they're just picking from the options we've given them, and we would be happy with any of those options anyway. So when you like, if you look at on Instagram or like wherever, we post a lot of our clients' salaries with their permission, of course, and the job offers they get. And sometimes you'll see like they get 30, 60, we've seen someone get like over $180,000 more than what they're making. And it's because A, they've probably been underpaid. They studied the right salary ranges, but B, we just ask these questions and we throw out ridiculous numbers that they come back a little bit shy of the ridiculous number, and we've already won then,
I love that. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. It's, I feel like there's not enough negotiation around salaries. I don't know if it's become taboo or just that's my perception of it, but I feel like there's this mindset. It's like, oh, you got the job, be grateful that you got the job. Don't rock the boat right as they say they want you. But I think like with anything in life, there's room for negotiation, and, ultimately people work for money. So to want to have a conversation about money is really not something that's inappropriate in the context of business,
100% agree. Yeah, they do. I think women in particular feel like that more than men, where like, oh, I got the job. I shouldn't really push it too much. But companies don't rescind offers just because you're asking for more. They almost expect you to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
We had one of our clients, when she negotiated and pushed back, the internal recruiter there actually said, thank you for negotiating with us. Right. Because she acknowledged that the salary they gave her was kind of low, on the lower end. And, they didn't say no to her. They gave her what she wanted. And they were almost appreciative that she took the time to push back a little bit. I don't think all companies do that, but, again, you need to have some audacity, and you need to go into this process understanding that they're coming in low. So let's kind of go in high, and then let's find a win-win for all of us.
And how much thought would you put into like the role? So for example, if you're a salesperson and you're going for a sales role, do you think to yourself, well, they're going to want to see how I close or how I get more out of a deal? Like, do you try to show that skill in a negotiation setting, or is that the wrong thing to do? Even though it's expected.
I think it's the right thing to do. But maybe if you're going in for a sales role, you want to ask for a higher title, because that title is reflective when you go and reach out to potential customers. And maybe you want to ask for a higher bonus. If you're in a sales role, you're making your money on the back end anyway of every deal. So you want as much upside on the back end as possible. So as one of the options I would give them, and this is counterintuitive, is I'd say, look, give me a lower base, but give me way more in like bonus or commissions or whatever, and a higher title. The company's almost going to they're almost going to say, heck yeah, let's do it. Right? But you come out as the winner, especially if you're confident in your capabilities as a salesperson and things like that. And a lot of these negotiations also sort of matter depending on, or how you negotiate depends a lot on like where in your career you are. If you're earlier in your career, you don't have the most wiggle room, but that's where you're going to come in and just say, look, I'll take the lower salary for now because it's the path towards my M&M store anyway. Right? And I'll come in here and I'll crush it. I'll rack up as many experiences, achievements, network, mentors as I can. And then I know in a year or 2 years, I'm going to move on anyway. And then we leverage it. So, it's all stepping stones and lily pads. It doesn't have to be like your next job. You need to get the most if you're just like 2 years into your career,
Totally. So you've said that word leverage a couple of times. do you want to just expand on that? So we've set the foundation here. We've gotten some really fantastic specific language. How would you now take this to help people think about their career as an investment? What would you say around that?
Yeah. So I think, it's kind of like if you own a home or if you own a stock, when's the best time to sell that stock or that home? It's when it's doing really well in the market, right? So you've bought it low, you're selling high. Basic investment advice. No need to write that down, obviously, but
you heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the smartest guy ever. But most people never look for a new job until they're actually at the low point. They've lost their job. They hate their boss. They hate the company. They're not being recognized. So now they're entering the market from this place of scarcity and they're reacting. I want to get away from this as fast as I can because it sucks. My salary sucks. My boss sucks. The culture sucks. I'm not getting promoted, whatever. And I'm going to find the next thing that's just not this. Without ever thinking, is the next thing here the right thing for me, right? So when you think of your career as an investment, again, this is almost counterintuitive, but when things are going so well for you at your company, you got a promotion, you've worked on really cool projects, that should be the time you harp and say, now who out there wants this, right? Needs this. And let me start looking. And this is where you become intentional, right? I'm only going to look for opportunities that serve me and my long-term goal. However, I want to see which companies out there then would pay me a lot more money or give me the growth I'm looking for, or both, because I have this experience now. And now just think of like when we enter something that we want from a place of like excitement, rather than a place of scarcity,
Totally.
we just generally do a lot better. We think a lot clearer. And I think that's sort of the same way you want to, and even if you sold your home or your stock after you've made so much money on it, now you kind of feel relaxed. Like I could take a breather and I can make the next investment wisely and I don't need to rush into it. Same thing with your career. When you enter it from this place of frustration, scarcity, whatever, you're thinking like, dang, I got to just get to the next thing so quickly. And then often that thing is a mistake anyway. Now you're back like doing that vicious cycle all over again.
Yeah. And when you look back, I think on people's careers that have been really successful and done a lot of different things, they kind of kept hopping from one lily pad to the next right when they were at the peak of whatever role they were in. It's like a great thing going, but they always had their eyes on the future. It's what we talked about earlier too, having your eyes on the future, not the past. And that mindset of being able to, pick up your bags and leave, even when things are going well, I think is what can lead people to, 5 great roles over like a 10-year period.
You're right. And you can sometimes like shoot really high up from one to the next. When you come off a really big win, like think of, we go back to sports. Okay.
Yeah.
We talked about Brady, but let's just take Patrick Mahomes for an example. He won a Super Bowl last year, right? And he's coming off this big high. People see how capable he is. People see how great he is. He's a great teammate. He's a great quarterback. He secures a $500 million that was the time to negotiate, right? And he did that. It's not when like, oh, I lost all the things. I suck at these things. Now let me go negotiate.
Right.
It's like thinking
back to
about
that peak,
if we're thinking about sports, it's like imagine if you were Jordan back in the day and you hit that shot to win the championship. That's the moment you should then look to leverage it, right? It's not like I'm going to come back and do this again. It's like, I just hit the game-winning shot. Let's go take advantage of that.
Yeah. Now who wants me, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. So, I mean, in terms of this conversation, I think one way to end it is talk about your entrepreneurial spirit and kind of get into that, because the three of us here, we've all gone from like the comfort of a corporate job, the stability of having that, and we've all taken that jump into the unknown. So there are people that are listening to this that are thinking the same thing. What would you share with those people around like what should they heavily consider before making a move over to the dark side? And I'm calling our side the dark side now.
I know. Okay, so good advice that a business / mindset coach gave me many, many, many years ago when I first started out. And I was so scared. Like some of my friends like saw me crying because I was so scared of taking the leap from stable job to like entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And one of them said, his coach says, okay, what's the worst case scenario if this thing you start doesn't work out? And I said to him, well, I guess I would have to go back to doing what I'm doing now. And he says, great. So how does it feel to be living your worst case scenario? And that to me, like, was like this holy F moment. I was like, wow, okay, you just blew my mind. And he's right. And, I don't think one needs to directly just do that. I was fortunate that I had a lot of savings and things had worked out for quite a while that I could make these leaps. But some people, like, you could just start small and you can start a side business, right?
Yeah.
So one, are you doing it for all the right reasons? And money should never be that. Two, I think again, you don't need to go as quickly as you think you need. Our lives are relatively long, our careers are relatively long, right? And you want to go in at a pace that's comfortable for you, and you need to take into account like your situation. Do you have a family? Do you have savings? Do you have any of this? Or if you don't have any of that, like how, then maybe it is easier for you to go and make a leap into entrepreneurship. So I think anyone who wants to become an entrepreneur should absolutely do it. I think it is extremely fulfilling. It's extremely difficult. But I think all of the difficulties that come with entrepreneurship are all the things that once we move past those difficulties is what makes that journey so much more fun. And then it's like, what's the next difficult thing? Bring it on. And then what's the next difficult thing? It's like, I look at like, people say the corporate world is like a hamster wheel, which in some cases it can be if you're not really like doing the whole thing we talked about, leveraging and moving. So it's a hamster wheel. Whereas like entrepreneurship almost is like a video game, because in the video game, there's a lot of levels. And sometimes we have to play those levels over and over again, but then we beat it. And then now we're on to the next level, right? Then we have to beat that. And then it's the next level. And so my friend told me too, he's like, man, the days I get frustrated, I remember I got really frustrated, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And he reminded me of that. He's like, entrepreneurship is like this video game, and how lucky are we to get to wake up every day and just play a video game?
It's amazing.
And I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I know that's great. That's a great way of thinking of it, because personally, I've even struggled with making the leap, right? Like the mental grind, the fact that you don't have stability, the fact that you're like thinking about if this is being even received, like all these thoughts creep into your mind. We've talked about imposter syndrome, but the fact that you just mentioned it as like a video game, I remember being a kid and like not being able to beat a level 15 times in a row, and then you beat the level and it feels great. And you're like, I'm ready for the next challenge. So you just definitely changed my mind on that. I appreciate that.
There's like, how many levels were in Mario? Remember like Mario Brothers? That's how old. That's like 100 levels, right?
Yeah.
But we just sat there and did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the Super Mario 64 generation, so I had I'd spent a lot of time on that second Bowser. Like it took us like 15 times for me and my brother just to get through that second Bowser, but we did it eventually. So.
And the thing is, like, how many times did you toss that controller down? And it didn't even break. You know what I mean? It was just there for you to pick it up again and just try that level again. I love that.
Yeah, I'm happy he told me that too. That kind of helps you keep going, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, no, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think the bottom line is like, what are you doing to not only achieve life nirvana, but in this context, like your career nirvana? So again, if we're just kind of recap this episode, it's around being granular, finding that M&M store, researching the job descriptions, appropriately reaching out to the right people with the right message, with the right value, connecting with them, being, figuring out how to like really make an impact there. When it comes to negotiation, give them the menu. Don't just take the menu that they're giving you. And just, I think overall, it's like what you did in the past doesn't affect your future. And the fact is that there's only one or two things that really can change the entire trajectory of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it. Thank you guys so much for having me on here, by the way.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Gaurav. Thank you.
how would people actually reach out to you? I know you have a website, but are there specific programs right now that you're, helping clients with?
Yeah. So in our career coaching company, we open up enrollment periodically. It just depends on how many people are in it. And we really like to maintain the integrity of it. So we only take on, I think, 15 people at a time, because that's how many we know we can support. So they can find me on Instagram at Gaurav Valani. I share a lot there about our program. My website, again, like you mentioned, is just gauravvalani.com. And then LinkedIn and Facebook as well. But yeah, I'm a lot more active on Instagram than any of those places. So yeah, it'd be cool if they want to reach out. Happy to talk to them.
Beautiful. No, we'll put that information in our show notes so people can reach out to you directly. But I mean, you definitely have value. You definitely have a perspective that's worth digging into. And clearly, as per your IG account, like your clients are doing pretty well. So no, we appreciate the time. And, we look forward to sharing this with the rest of the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can sign up for the Rising Weekly newsletter sent out each week.
Every Friday, we expand on the episode with insights, recommendations, and more.
You can sign up at risinglaterally.com.
Thank you.